The most decisive moment in your life is not when circumstances change, but when you decide who you are regardless of what appears. Most people are waiting for proof before they allow themselves to feel secure, confident, or fulfilled. They look to the outer world as a mirror that must first approve their inner state. But the order of creation has never worked that way. Life does not respond to hoping, wishing, or effort. It responds to certainty. It responds to the assumption you live from, not the desire you visit occasionally. When you act from certainty, life must obey, because life has no choice but to express the state you are occupying. Certainty is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not demand validation or reassurance. Certainty is quiet, settled, and unmoved. It is the internal knowing that something is already resolved, even when no visible evidence has yet appeared. When you are certain, you do not argue with life. You do not try to convince others. You do not mentally rehearse reasons why it should work. You simply live as one for whom it already has. That inner posture is the command. That inner posture is the law in motion. Most people misunderstand action. They believe action means effort, force, and struggle. But true action is not physical, it is psychological. It is the movement of consciousness from uncertainty to decision. When you act from certainty, your outer behavior may look simple, even ordinary, but its cause is powerful because it is final. Life rearranges itself, not because you tried harder, but because you stopped wavering. Wavering is the only enemy. Doubt is not dangerous because it feels uncomfortable. It is dangerous because it splits consciousness. A divided mind produces divided results. One moment you imagine fulfillment, and the next you return to lack. One moment you feel confident, and the next you check reality to see if it agrees. That checking is not harmless. It is a confession that you do not yet believe, and life faithfully reflects that confession back to you. Certainty ends the need to check. When you know something is yours, you do not monitor its arrival. You do not measure progress. You do not interpret signs. You move through your days with a natural composure because internally the matter is settled. This settled feeling is not excitement. It is calm. It is the stillness that comes when a decision has been made so completely that no alternative remains psychologically available. This is why emotional mastery is essential. If your emotions rise and fall with circumstances, then circumstances are your master. But when you decide internally, emotions align naturally. You are no longer reacting, you are residing. You are no longer trying to control outcomes, you are embodying conclusions. Life does not need instructions. It needs alignment. It needs you to occupy the end so fully that it has no option but to reflect it. Understand this clearly. Life is not testing you, it is confirming you. Every experience is a mirror, not a judge. When you see delay, resistance, or contradiction, it is not punishment or failure. It is simply showing you where you are still negotiating, instead of deciding. The moment you stop negotiating with reality and stand internally, as though the matter is complete, reality begins to reorganize without effort. Certainty is not pretending. It is not affirming against your feelings. It is the feeling of naturalness. It is when an idea stops feeling like a wish and starts feeling like a fact. Facts do not require maintenance. You do not remind yourself that your name is your name. You do not rehearse believing it. You simply respond from it. In the same way, when your desire becomes an assumption, it no longer feels like something you are trying to get. It feels like something you are living from. This is the difference between acting to get and acting because. Acting to get comes from lack. Acting because comes from possession. When you act because something is already true internally, your behavior changes subtly. Your tone shifts. Your decisions simplify. Your reactions soften. You no longer chase confirmation because you are already confirmed within yourself. That inner confirmation is what life responds to. Many people wait for confidence before they act, not realizing that confidence is a byproduct of decision, not its prerequisite. You do not become certain because things improve. Things improve because you become certain. Certainty is chosen. It is not earned through repetition or time. It is assumed. The moment you assume it fully, the moment you stop leaving psychological escape routes, you step into authority. Authority is not dominance. It is inner alignment. It is knowing who you are without needing circumstances to cooperate first. When you operate from authority, life feels different. Problems no longer feel personal. Delays no longer feel threatening. You are no longer emotionally pulled into appearances because you understand that appearances are temporary echoes of past assumptions. You respond calmly because you are not trying to fix the mirror, you are adjusting the source. This calm is powerful. It unsettles what once seemed immovable, not because you are forcing change, but because you are no longer agreeing with the old state internally. Life cannot continue to express what you no longer sustain with feeling and belief. When certainty replaces hope, when knowing replaces wishing, the old conditions lose their energy source. They fade not through effort, but through irrelevance. You must see yourself as the cause, not the observer. As long as you see yourself as someone reacting to life, you will feel at the mercy of circumstances. But when you recognize that life is responding to your internal state, responsibility replaces frustration. And responsibility here is not blame. It is power. It is the realization that you are not waiting for permission to feel secure, fulfilled, or successful. You are authorizing it now. Acting from certainty means you stop asking, will this work? And begin living as someone for whom it already has. Your inner dialogue changes. Your expectations change. Your patience increases because you are not anxious for proof. You know that movement is inevitable because the cause has been established. The seed does not panic underground. It does not question whether growth is happening. It rests in the certainty of its nature. Life works the same way. When the internal state is fixed, the external expression follows in its own time and manner. Interference only happens when you dig up the seed to check. Certainty leaves it alone. Certainty trusts the law. It trusts the process not because it is blind, but because it understands the relationship between consciousness and experience. You are not meant to wrestle with life. You are meant to direct it through assumption. The effort most people exert is unnecessary because it is aimed at symptoms rather than causes. They try to manage circumstances, people, and outcomes, all while leaving their inner state untouched. But the moment you adjust the inner position, the outer world begins moving without strain. This is why inner stillness is not passivity. It is command. Stillness is the absence of inner contradiction. When you are still inside, life becomes active outside. When you stop emotionally reacting, reality starts rearranging. The less you interfere, the more efficiently life responds. Certainty removes interference. You do not need to know how things will unfold. You only need to know who you are being. The how belongs to life. The being belongs to you. When you occupy the state of certainty, life organizes the details with precision you could never plan consciously. Opportunities appear naturally. Conversations shift. Decisions align. Not because you forced them, but because you made room for them by removing doubt. Do not confuse certainty with rigidity. Certainty is flexible in form, but fixed in assumption. You are not controlling specific events, you are trusting the end. You remain open, relaxed, and present because there is nothing to defend. When challenges arise, you do not panic because your identity is not threatened. You know the outcome is secure. This is the mental posture of someone who understands their creative authority. They do not beg life for cooperation. They expect alignment, not arrogantly but naturally. Just as gravity does not ask permission to function, your assumption does not require approval. It operates because it is lawfully expressed. When you begin to live this way, you will notice something subtle but profound. Life starts responding faster, not always instantly, but inevitably. The resistance you once experienced begins to dissolve. Situations that felt heavy become lighter. You realize that much of what you struggled against was sustained by your own inner tension. When the tension leaves, the problem loses its grip. Certainty simplifies life. It reduces mental noise. It frees energy. You stop rehearsing conversations that never happen. You stop worrying about outcomes you no longer doubt. Your mind becomes quieter because it is no longer divided. This quietness is not emptiness. It is focus. It is alignment. It is power without strain. You were never meant to convince life. You were meant to assume. The moment you assume with finality, life reflects that assumption because it cannot do otherwise. It has no independent will. It mirrors. It echoes. It obeys the dominant state you occupy. So decide. not emotionally but internally. Decide who you are. Decide what is true. Decide without conditions. Let the decision be so complete that you stop revisiting it. When doubt arises, do not fight it. Simply return to the decision. Certainty is not maintained through force, but through refusal to reopen the question. When you act from certainty, your life becomes coherent. Your inner world and outer world move in the same direction. And when that alignment is established, life must obey, not because it is submissive, but because it is faithful. Faithful to consciousness, faithful to assumption, faithful to the state you call home. Stand there, remain there, live from there, and watch how effortlessly life rearranges itself to match the certainty you have chosen to be. And as you remain in that inner position, something important becomes clear. Certainty is not something you visit during meditation or moments of inspiration. It is a place you live from. It is the baseline of your identity. When certainty becomes your default, you no longer need to manage every thought or emotion with urgency. You allow thoughts to pass without assigning them authority. You feel emotions without letting them define you. You understand that passing states do not override a decided state. This is where most people misunderstand inner work. They believe they must feel perfect all the time. They think one moment of doubt cancels everything. But certainty is deeper than momentary feeling. It is a decision beneath emotion. Even when surface emotions fluctuate, the underlying assumption remains intact. Just as the ocean remains, even when waves move, certainty stays rooted even when the mind momentarily stirs. When you act from certainty, you stop personalizing temporary appearances. You no longer interpret a delay as rejection or a challenge as evidence against you. You see events as neutral movements, not final statements. This neutrality gives you tremendous emotional freedom. You are no longer emotionally invested in proving yourself right because you already are right internally. He simply hasn't finished rearranging yet. There is a profound difference between reacting and responding. Reaction comes from uncertainty. Response comes from authority. When you react, you feel pushed by life. When you respond, you feel centered within yourself. Certainty creates space between you and circumstances. In that space, you regain choice. You choose your inner posture instead of surrendering it to appearances. Notice how certainty changes your sense of time. When you are uncertain, everything feels urgent. You feel pressure to fix, force, or accelerate outcomes. Time feels like an enemy. But when you are certain, time becomes irrelevant. You are patient without effort. You are relaxed without indifference. You are present without anxiety. This is because you are no longer waiting for life to begin. You are already living from the fulfillment internally. This inner fulfillment does not make you passive. It makes you precise. Your actions become fewer but more effective. You no longer scatter your energy across endless strategies. You move when moved, speak when appropriate, and remain silent when silence serves you. Life begins to meet you halfway because you are no longer chasing it from a place of need. Certainty also changes how others experience you. Without trying to influence or persuade, you become grounded. People sense it. Conversations shift. Interactions soften or align. This is not manipulation. It is resonance. When you are certain within yourself, you stop pulling energy from others, and that alone alters dynamics. Life reflects the inner stability you carry. Most resistance dissolves when you stop emotionally negotiating with outcomes. Negation implies doubt. It implies that something could go wrong. Certainty removes that implication. You are no longer bargaining with the future. You are living from a settled inner conclusion. And life, which only reflects conclusions, adjusts accordingly. You may notice that certainty feels unfamiliar at first, not because it is unnatural, but because uncertainty has been practiced for so long. Doubt became habitual, waiting became normal, reacting became automatic. Certainty requires unlearning those habits. It requires allowing yourself to feel secure without external permission. That can feel strange initially, but it is the most natural state you can occupy. As certainty deepens, your inner dialogue becomes simpler. You stop explaining yourself internally. You stop justifying your desires. You stop arguing with opposing thoughts. Silence increases not because you suppress thought, but because there is nothing left to debate. The matter feels closed. Closed matters do not generate noise. This inner closure is what gives certainty its power. Life responds to what feels final. Open questions produce inconsistent results. Final assumptions produce movement. When something is final in consciousness, it must externalize, because consciousness seeks expression. It cannot remain unexpressed indefinitely. And so you continue your days not as someone hoping life will cooperate, but as someone quietly allowing it to catch up. You move through familiar environments with a different internal posture. Nothing dramatic changes on the surface at first, yet everything feels different beneath. The weight lifts, the urgency fades, the inner struggle ends. You are no longer trying to become someone else. You are allowing yourself to be who you have decided you are. This decision is not loud, it is not emotional, it is steady, it is consistent, it is carried into ordinary moments, mundane tasks, and quiet hours. This is where certainty is proven, not in dramatic affirmations, but in calm consistency. Life responds to consistency more than intensity. Intensity comes and goes. Consistency endures. When your assumption remains the same regardless of mood or circumstance, it gains momentum. Momentum does not require effort. It builds naturally as resistance disappears. And as this momentum builds, you may notice that certain problems simply stop appearing, not because you solved them, but because you stop supporting the state that produced them. Other desires move closer, sometimes in unexpected ways. You are not surprised, but you are quietly aware that something is shifting. This awareness does not lead to excitement or impatience. It leads to steadiness. You understand that once the inner state is secured, the outer world has no alternative path. It must reflect, it must comply, it must obey, not out of force, but out of law. So you remain attentive, not to circumstances, but to your inner position. You notice when the mind tries to reopen questions you have already decided. You gently return to certainty without struggle. You do not punish yourself for wandering thoughts. You simply refuse to live from them. In this way, certainty becomes effortless. It is no longer something you maintain, it is something you return to. Again and again, you choose the settled state over the restless one, and each return strengthens the assumption, deepening its roots in consciousness. Life continues to move, events continue to unfold, but you are no longer moved by them in the same way. You are anchored, and from that anchor point, everything else begins to reorganize quietly, naturally, inevitably, in ways that do not require your supervision or concern. You begin to trust the unfolding not because you are passive, but because you recognize the source has already been set. Trust grows naturally when you are no longer divided within yourself. There is nothing to manage when the assumption is stable. You start to notice how much energy was once wasted on internal arguments. Arguments with circumstances, with people, with time, even with yourself. Certainty ends these arguments, not by winning them, but by refusing to participate. You no longer need to be right externally because you are aligned internally. This alignment produces a quiet confidence that does not depend on outcomes to validate it. As this state becomes familiar, your perception sharpens. You see life more clearly, not through emotional distortion, but through calm observation. You understand that reactions are optional. You see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You notice that what once triggered you no longer has the same pull. This is not emotional numbness. It is emotional sovereignty. Certainty gives you space to choose your response instead of defaulting to habit, and habits lose power when they are no longer fed. Old patterns fade simply because you are no longer living from the identity that sustained them. You do not fight the past. You outgrow it. In moments where life presents contrast, you remain steady. You do not deny what you say. But you also do not accept it as final. You understand that appearances are transitional. They are not commands. They are reflections in motion. Certainty allows you to witness change without needing to rush it. This steadiness changes how you experience challenges. They no longer feel like threats to your identity. They feel like movements within a larger process you trust. You are not trying to control every outcome because you are not afraid of uncertainty in form. Your certainty is not attached to how things happen, only to what is true within. And because of this, creativity returns. When fear recedes, imagination expands. You begin to think more clearly, not about what could go wrong, but about what aligns. Ideas arise without pressure. Decisions feel simpler. You are not second-guessing every step because you are not questioning the destination. You may find that you act less impulsively. Certainty removes the need to prove, to rush, to react. You are no longer driven by urgency. You are guided by alignment. Actions emerge naturally from the state you are in. They feel obvious, not forced. Others may not understand this shift at first. They may interpret your calm as detachment or indifference. But it is neither. It is presence without desperation. It is engagement without anxiety. You are fully involved in life without being emotionally dependent on outcomes. As certainty deepens, your relationship with desire changes. Desire no longer feels like longing. It feels like recognition. You are not reaching for something outside yourself. You are acknowledging what already belongs to the state you occupy. This removes tension from wanting. Wanting dissolves into knowing. You also become more patient with yourself. You stop demanding immediate perfection. You allow integration to happen gradually. Certainty does not rush growth. It trusts timing because it trusts the source. You move forward without pressure, knowing that movement itself is inevitable. This inner patience reflects outwardly. Situations that once felt delayed now feel orderly. You are less inclined to label experiences as good or bad. You see them as adjustments, as recalibrations, as life aligning itself with your internal position. Nothing feels wasted. You notice that when uncertainty tries to return, it does so quietly, almost out of habit. It no longer has the same intensity. You recognize it without identifying with it. You do not suppress it. You simply do not follow it. Attention remains with certainty, and certainty grows stronger through that attention. Over time, certainty becomes less of a practice and more of a background state. It is there when you wake up and when you move through your day. It is present in conversations, in decisions, in moments of stillness. You are no longer reminding yourself who you are. You are living as that identity naturally. And life continues responding, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. Pieces shift. Doors open quietly. Resistance fades where you once expected it. You are not surprised because certainty does not seek surprise. It expects coherence. So you remain where you are internally, without tightening, without drifting. You allow life to complete its movement while you remain settled. You do not look for confirmation because confirmation is no longer needed. You know what you know, and from is knowing, everything else continues to unfold. With a rhythm that feels both inevitable and strangely familiar. You recognize this rhythm not because it is new, but because it feels like a return to an inner steadiness that was always available but rarely occupied. Certainty does not feel like acquiring something foreign. It feels like remembering something essential. As you live from this place, you stop measuring yourself against external standards. Comparison fades because it no longer serves a purpose. You are not trying to validate your path by observing someone else's progress. You understand that life responds uniquely to the state you inhabit, and no two expressions need to look the same. This understanding frees you from unnecessary pressure and restores a sense of ease. You begin to notice how subtle inner shifts create tangible outer changes. A single decision held consistently alters the tone of entire days. Conversations become smoother. Timing improves. Situations resolve themselves without dramatic intervention. These changes do not feel miraculous. They feel orderly, as though life is finally allowed to function without interference. Certainty also refines your attention. You become selective about where you place your focus. You are less interested in consuming information that reinforces doubt or confusion. You naturally gravitate toward what supports your inner alignment. This is not avoidance, it is discernment. You protect your inner state not through fear, but through understanding its creative role. When you speak, your words carry a different weight, not because they are louder or more persuasive, but because they are grounded. You are not speaking to convince, you are speaking to express. That difference is felt. Communication becomes cleaner. Misunderstandings lessen. You are clearer with yourself, and that clarity translates outward. Even in moments of uncertainty in the world around you, you remain composed. You understand that external instability does not require internal participation. You can observe change without absorbing chaos. This ability is not detachment, it is mastery. You are engaged without being entangled. As certainty continues to anchor you, your sense of identity stabilizes. You are no longer defined by fluctuating circumstances. Success does not inflate you, and challenges do not diminish you. Your sense of self remains consistent because it is rooted in decision rather than condition. This consistency is what allows life to mirror you accurately. Inconsistency produces mixed signals. Certainty produces clarity, and clarity invites response. Life responds cleanly when the signal is clean. You may notice that you are less inclined to explain yourself, both internally and externally. Explanations often arise from doubt. When you are certain, there is nothing to justify. You allow your life to speak instead of your words. This quiet confidence removes unnecessary friction from your experience. Your inner world becomes less crowded. Thoughts simplify. Emotional spikes soften. You are not suppressing anything, you are integrating. Everything has a place, but nothing dominates. Certainty acts as the organizing principle. It brings order without effort. In this ordered state, creativity flows more freely. You are no longer blocked by fear of failure or concern over outcomes. You create because it feels natural, not because you are chasing validation. Expression becomes an extension of being, not a strategy. You also become more forgiving of yourself and others. Certainty reduces defensiveness. You no longer interpret everything as personal. You see people acting from their own states, just as you are acting from yours. This understanding softens judgment and increases compassion without weakening boundaries. As days pass, certainty proves itself not through grand gestures, but through quiet consistency. You wake up with less resistance. You move through tasks with less friction. You rest without guilt. You are not waiting for permission to feel at ease. Ease has become your natural condition. And when life presents new desires or directions, you meet them without overwhelm. You trust your ability to decide again. Certainty is no longer limited to one outcome. It is a way of being. You know that whatever you choose to assume, life will respond in kind. This knowledge does not make you reckless. It makes you deliberate. You choose assumptions carefully, knowing their power. You do not entertain ideas lightly. You understand that what you dwell in, you invite. This awareness sharpens your inner discipline without creating tension. So you continue, day by day, not forcing, not chasing, not retreating. You remain present in your life, while anchored in certainty, and life continues its adjustment, responding faithfully to the state you have chosen to occupy, in subtle yet unmistakable ways. You begin to sense a quiet cooperation in events, as if life is moving with you rather than against you. What once felt random now feels responsive. Why? Oh, you are no longer surprised when things align, because alignment has become the expectation rather than the exception. This expectation does not create pressure. It creates ease. You are not watching closely for signs, nor are you interpreting every moment for meaning. You are simply living, and in that simplicity, movement occurs. Certainty removes the need for constant analysis. When the destination is secure, the journey can be experienced without tension. You also become more grounded in the present moment. Uncertainty pulls the mind into the future or traps it in the past. Certainty anchors you now. You are not mentally rehearsing possible failures or revisiting old disappointments. Your attention rests where your power is, and that alone changes the quality of your experience. In this grounded state, intuition becomes clearer. Decisions arise without strain. You know when to act and when to wait, not because you are calculating outcomes, but because you are aligned with your inner direction. Certainty does not rush timing, it respects it. You may notice that when obstacles appear, they resolve more quickly, not because they never arise, but because you no longer feed them with emotional resistance. Resistance gives form persistence. Acceptance combined with certainty dissolves friction. You acknowledge what is, without surrendering what you know to be true internally. This balance is delicate yet powerful. You are not denying reality, and you are not bowing to it. You are allowing it to adjust. Life responds well to this posture because it is free of conflict. Conflict slows movement. Certainty smooths it. Over time, you trust yourself more deeply. You trust your decisions, your perceptions, your inner compass. This trust is not blind. It is earned through consistency. Each time life responds to your settled assumptions, confidence strengthens. You stop doubting your role in creation. With this trust comes a sense of responsibility that feels empowering rather than heavy. You understand that your inner state matters, and this awareness encourages care, not fear. You tend to your inner world the way you would tend to something valuable, not obsessively, but attentively. You also become less reactive to external opinions. Approval and disapproval lose their influence. You listen without absorbing. You consider without surrendering. Certainty creates an internal anchor that keeps you steady amid differing perspectives. This steadiness allows you to remain open. You are not defensive because you are not threatened. You can receive new ideas without losing your center. You can change direction without feeling inconsistent. Certainty is not rigidity, it is stability. As you continue to live from this place, your relationship with effort changes. You still act, but action feels lighter. You are not pushing against life, you are moving with it. Even effortful tasks feel less draining because they are not fueled by anxiety or doubt. You may find that rest becomes deeper, sleep improves, moments of stillness feel nourishing rather than uncomfortable. This is because your mind is no longer carrying unresolved questions. Certainty closes loops. Closed loops free energy. And in this free energy, joy begins to surface quietly. Not excitement that depends on circumstances, but a steady contentment. You are content not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself or with life. This contentment does not dull ambition. It clarifies it. You know what matters and what does not. You pursue what aligns without urgency, and you release what does not without regret. Choices become simpler when guided by certainty. So you continue forward, not seeking confirmation, not bracing for disappointment, not chasing reassurance. You remain aligned with the state you have chosen, and life, attentive and responsive, continues to mirror that alignment. So let this be the moment you stop waiting for life to decide for you. Let this be the moment you recognize that certainty is not something you earn later, but something you assume now. You were never meant to live in reaction, hesitation, or emotional dependence on circumstances. You were meant to move as the cause, not the effect. When you stand inwardly resolved, when you act from a knowing that does not bend to appearances, life has no alternative response. It must reorganize, it must align, it must obey. Not because you force it, but because you are finally occupying the position of authority within yourself. Decide once, stand firm, remain unmoved. And from that inner certainty, watch how effortlessly life reshapes itself to reflect the power you chose to claim.